covered 4 sessions on this letter, and today we will be doing part 5. So let us begin our session with the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom, O hidden light, shining in every creature, O hidden love, embracing all in oneness, may each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Thank you and welcome once again. So just to recall about this letter number 93A and 93B, these letters are about a list of questions which was posed by AP Sinnet, and their answers were given by Mahatma KH. And these letters, they were exchanged at Shimla in October 1882. These questions, they covered various topics which included civilizations and races which existed previous to the past 2000 years. It also dwelt on physical science pertaining to magnetic conditions, rain, the sun's corona, the composition of the sun, conditions on Jupiter, and existence of planets which are not known to modern astronomy, and what are the ways and means to discover them. Then we also studied questions on after death states, the devachanic bliss, and the last thoughts of the mind before death, and regaining full remembrance at the end of the minor cycle, that is, at the end of 7 rounds. So that was the last answer that we discussed, answer 18. Now, Sinnet has posed 29 questions in this letter. Instead of giving the answers to the point, Mahatma KH has given very elaborate answers, because he says in his own words, I repeat, I answer you for your instruction as a student of occultism, my lay chela, and not at all with a view of answering the Journal of Science. So why his answers are so elaborate? He's saying, because I'm instructing you as a student of occultism. These are the teachings of occultism he is giving to Sinnet, who was his lay chela. It is not just a question answer like it is written in Journal of Science. Moreover, what Mahatma Ji mentions in one sentence, he will write just one sentence, but to understand it, we require to elaborate and explain it by 10 sentences. Hence, this is a very, very long letter. So now we will move on to question 19, which continues on the after death stages. So Sinnet has mentioned in his question, you say, and even the shells of those good men whose pages will not be found missing in the great book of lives, even they will regain their remembrance and an appearance of self-consciousness only after the 6th and 7th principles with the essence of the 5th have gone to their gestation period. So this is Sinnet's question, that even the good men who, always they have something good and noble within them, which is assimilated with the spiritual soul. So even such good men, they don't have immediate recollection or remembrance. They also regain the remembrance after death only when the 6th and 7th principles, they have assimilated the essence of the 5th and they have gone into gestation. So why is this? Now this question, it is basically referring to the previous letter, chronological letter number 70, in which Mahatma Ji had already answered these questions on after death stages. So here Sinnet still had some doubt which he is asking, and Mahatma Ji explains that it is true that only after the struggle and separation of these, the higher duad and the middle duad, only then the shell can gradually have any kind of hazy consciousness. Okay, the higher duad, it is Atma Buddhi, and the middle duad is Manas and Kam. So when these separate, that Mahatmaji had explained in letter number 17. When the Atma Buddhi and the Kam Manas, when these two they separate, only after that the shell can develop a kind of hazy consciousness. So after physical death, there comes a stage where all the higher immortal principles, they are separated from the lower mortal principles. And in fact, Manas, which is the human soul, it is immortal, but it gets enmeshed with calm during incarnation, the fourth principle, calm. So all that was virtuous and noble about the life, when physical death occurs, then all that was virtuous and noble in the life, which is just closed, that is the finer and spiritual portions of Manas. And this pure Manas, it separates from calm Manas, and it is then assimilated by Buddhi. So then Atma Buddhi Manas, it goes into dormancy, or what is called as gestation. And it awakens again in Devachan at a later stage. While what happens to the lower portion of Manas, which is not extricated from calm, that gives rise to Kam Roop, or the shell. That shell is galvanized by whatever is the remaining lower Manas. And then the shell gradually develops a hazy consciousness. But that consciousness, it is only like a shadow of the personality. It cannot have the total recollection. It is just a shadow of the personality that was actually living. So this shell, it regains a kind of remembrance or self-consciousness only after the higher principles, they separate from the personality. And they have gone into gestation, not before that. But so this is the case of normal cases, death in normal cases. But this process is not the same in case of suicides. In case of suicide, only the physical body is lost. All the other principles, they remain intact. So that entity who has lost his physical body due to self-injury, committed suicide. So such an entity, he must bide his time for the remaining duration of what would have been his natural lifespan. You see, so horrible suicide is, because neither is that entity alive. It's not in physical plane, and nor is it in the normal process of after death stages. All its other principles, they remain intact, and that entity should bide its time for that remaining duration of what would have been its natural lifespan. And only then this separation of higher and lower principles will happen. So that was Master's answer to question number 19 on when the remembrance is regained by the shell. Okay, that is after separation of the higher and lower principles. Then Sinnet poses his next question a little later on, whether the personal ego was good, bad, or indifferent. His consciousness leaves him as suddenly as the flame leaves the wick. His perceptive faculties become extinct forever. So can actually a physical brain which is dead, can it retain its perceptive faculties? That is the question. Okay, to perceive something. So that which will perceive in the shell is something that perceives with a borrowed or reflective light, reflected light. We just saw it is the lower manas which is enmeshed with calm. It galvanizes that shell. So it is with that borrowed light that the shell is able to perceive with a borrowed or reflected light. Physical brain is dead. So Sinnet is asking what is the nature of the remembrance and self-consciousness of the shell? And what is the extent of personal identity in such elementaries or the shell? To this, Mahatmaji answers that whatever the shell remembers or whatever self-consciousness a shell has, it is of the nature of material-psychological attributes and sensations of the lower five skandhas. So two things he has mentioned, material-psychological attributes. What is that? Material-psychological attributes, they are basically the strong urges or the desire that the person had while he was living to attain material goals. So during his lifetime, all that what he considered as a measure of his personal worth and achievement, all those material goals, They are the material-psychological attributes. That is what the shell will remember. Okay. And second thing that the shell remembers is sensations of the lower 5 skandha. Now, skandha, we know according to Buddhist thought, are the 5 elements which sum up the whole existence of an individual's mental and physical existence. Remember, only the mental and physical existence. So actually, esoterically, there are 7 skandha, but exoterically, only 5 are mentioned. The lower 5 skandha, which pertain to embodied existence. Okay, when the being is embodied. So therefore, they pertain only to the individual's mental and physical existence. And that is what the shell will remember. It cannot remember the higher principles, the higher 2. Okay, that is the 7th and 6th. It can remember only the everything about the lower 5 skandha. So it is again a separate topic, what are skandha and how they work. Okay, we won't go into the details of skandha, but the shell, it remembers these 2 things: urges for the material goals and sensations of the embodied existence. It cannot remember anything or any experience regarding the 6th and 7th principles. That is what we should remember about the shell. Now, everything that is pertaining to embodied existence, shell remembers it, but it is discarded by the ego. Ego enters into Devachan. And it is discarded because it is not purely spiritual perceptions, emotions, and feelings. They are not spiritual. The purely spiritual always originates from Buddhi Manas. That is 6th and 5th principle, not from embodied existence. So everything pertaining to embodied existence is discarded by ego. So the question is, if everything pertaining to embodied existence, it is discarded, then what is it that gives the notion of individuality or the I-ness to the ego in Devachan? Mahatmaji explains to us that it is the higher manas. The higher manas is responsible for this divine spiritual notion of I in the monad. So remember, even in the monad is Atma Buddhi. Even in that monad, the notion of I will be there. It is there. It is called the Aham Bhav in Sanskrit, Ahankar. Okay, Aham Bhav. So, and this notion, he's saying that it comes from the higher manas. When ego goes into Devachan, Atma Buddhi Manas. So, higher manas gives this notion of I to the monad. Now, at the moment of physical death, everything pertaining to embodied personality, it becomes extinct. It perishes. And it remains as a hazy remembrance for the shell. Shell will remember it hazily. So this is the first remembrance. The shell will remember it. Now, it is once more remembered. That means a second time it will be remembered. Everything pertaining to embodied existence, it will be remembered the second time by the ego at the threshold of Devachan, when the ego is just about to enter Devachan. And of course, it is rejected by the ego because it is not spiritual. And then this remembrance returns for a third time. It will return for a third time fully at the end of the minor cycle. Minor cycle means at the end of the 7 rounds. Presently, we are in the 4th round. The Earth is septenary. So all 7 globes, when they are completed, that is 1 round. We are in the middle of 4th round. So when 7 rounds will be completed, that is end of minor cycle, then this remembrance of embodied existence, it will return. And at that time, the merits and demerits of the sum total of all our collective existence throughout these 7 rounds, they will be weighed. Their merits and demerits, they will be weighed. And according to that will be our further evolution. So it is true, Mahatmaji says that it is true the consciousness, it leaves the ego suddenly, like a flame leaves the wick when we blow the candle. The candle is burning, but when we blow on it, quickly the flame goes out. But when the candle is relighted, okay, so here the lighting of the candle is, it is compared with incarnation. So that means in the next incarnation, when the candle is relighted, the same particles which produce the previous flame, previous objective flame, they are drawn by mutual affinity. So they will form the next flame also. So what it means, that those same particles which were animating the ego in the previous incarnation, they come back. They are drawn by mutual affinity to animate the next incarnation, the embodied ego. And these particles are the skandh. They are the skandh from the karma of previous personality. Okay, whatever karma have, so that is how the law of karma works. Whatever you have done in the previous incarnation, so those skandha are created and they will come back as soon as ego emerges from devachan, and they create the next incarnation. And so, though this is true that the previous skandh they come to form the new personality, still the previous and the new personalities, they cannot be called identical. They are not identical. In any case, they are not identical, whether it is a case of failure of nature, like in case of children, if a child passes away, then immediate reincarnation, or the case of congenital idiots. So they are also failures of nature, or in the case of normal cases, like uh, rebirth of the egos, which come back into karmic life from devachan or from avichi. So even in such cases, in any of these cases, never the two personalities, old and new, they will be identical. It is not possible. Then further Mahatmaji goes on to explain the nature of the remembrance and self-consciousness of the shell. Okay, so he has already mentioned it is a hazy recollection. It is a shadow recollection. But what is this nature of remembrance that the shell has? Whatever the personality was, the shell is simply reflecting that with borrowed light. Borrowed light is that lower manas, which is still enmeshed with calm. So there is a whole lot of distinction between memory and perceptive faculties. Now this you need to understand very clearly. What is memory and what is perceptive faculty? There is a whole lot of difference between them, Mahatmaji says. And to illustrate his point in the letter, Mahatmaji has given the examples of a madman, a dog, and a shell. Okay, the memory, it allows to recall. So what is memory? It will allow to recall from a past incident or event, whatever has happened, or it will associate results with causes. So this is the way memory works. And on the other hand, perceptive faculties, they allow to realize the truth that is underlying a phenomena or anything like a phenomena. So it will allow you to realize what is the underlying basis, what is the foundation of this underlying phenomena. And perceptive faculties, they are a much higher capability than memory. Okay? Like in man, we have memory also and we can perceive things also. So this ability to perceive, it is a much higher capability than memory. So now in case of shells, during seances, the person who is acting as a medium, he is in magnetic sympathy with the shell of the person who's deceased. And we already know that the shell is galvanized by the portion of the lower manas, which is entangled with calm. So that manas which could not be purified and could not be absorbed by Atma Buddhi, so that is what is galvanizing this shell. And with that hazy consciousness, the shell is able to perceive. So this is the perceptive ability of the shell. But with that hazy consciousness, it will perceive through the borrowed organs of the medium, because the physical man is no longer there and shell is in magnetic sympathy with the medium. So through the borrowed organs of the medium, the shell will perceive, and it can perceive only that what it finds in the circle of the people who are gathered and the medium. And therefore, often it will give you very rational replies. At times it will act very highly intelligently, but it knows nothing about the things which are not known to others, okay, which are not known to the medium and to the people who are gathered. So that shell can know nothing other than that, because it is working through their borrowed organs. Okay, so that is only the perceptive faculty of the shell, nothing beyond that. We already saw above that the shell cannot experience or know about the higher principles, the sixth, the seventh, and the sixth. Okay, so its perception is also a borrowed perception. Now, what happens in the case of a highly intelligent person, a learned person who was utterly unspiritual? Okay, he dies a natural death. So, in his case, the shell will last much longer because it is helped by the shadow of his own memory. That person was so intelligent, he knew so much. So, his own memory helps the shell. And it may not be that shell, it may be able to mechanically repeat long speeches or long pieces of learnings, knowledge, whatever that person knew. The shell may be able to mechanically repeat it through a medium. Okay. But he knew what that person knew during his lifetime and thought about, only that the shell can speak. It cannot speak anything new. Something which the person did not know during his lifetime, that cannot be spoken by the shell. Okay? So this is a shadow memory. It is the refuse, it is the discarded remains of the buddhi, which is left in the Mansik principle of that person because he was highly intelligent and learned. Okay. So Mahatma Ji, after explaining all these things to Sinnet about the shell and how it works, see, because at that time in the Western society, the phenomena of spiritism was at its peak. People would like to perform those seances and call the spirit and seek answers. So Mahatma Ji, after explaining all this, he is urging Sinnet to challenge the spiritualists fearlessly because there exists no disembodied spirit which sees and perceives things beyond what the living person knew. Okay, so it is just a mechanical perception of the shell. It is not an intelligent entity. It can know nothing beyond what the living person knew. Sinnet, Mahatma Ji says, Sinnet can test this using the most reliable medium of that time, Stanton Moses. We've read about Stanton Moses in many previous letters. He had this mistaken imperator who he thought is his spirit guide. And Mahatma Ji tells Sinnet he can test by asking him something which Stanton Moses did not know. He gives, for example, if you hide something in a box, Stanton Moses doesn't know, and then you ask the imperator what is in the box, he will not be able to answer. Or, for example, a few lines of Sanskrit shlok, which Stanton Moses doesn't know. So therefore, if you ask the imperator, he also won't be able to answer. Okay. So in such cases, the spirit guide will not be able to give the right answer, and it can easily be proved that it is not a disembodied spirit which is giving all the answers from some higher level. Okay. Now, this above thing, it clearly shows that shells do not have any personal remembrances. There is no personal remembrance of the shell. Mahatma Ji is urging Sinnet to stimulate investigations in this direction and to lay bare the misconceptions and superstitions which were highly prevalent in the spiritual circles of those times. You see how well Mahatma Ji has explained in so much detail to Sinnet, so that he is enabled to remove the superstitions from the spiritism, from amongst the members and from the Western society. That is actually the objective of studying theosophy. And we must also strive for the same. Now, to sum this up, what Mahatma Ji has said in a reply to this question, personal consciousness leaves everyone at death. And when the center of memory is re-established in the shell, then the shell will remember and speak out of its recollections through the brain of some other living human who is the medium. So that is the nature of remembrance of the shell. Okay, the answer to that question 20. Then we will move on to the next question 21. Sinnet has asked, the spiritual ego goes circling through the worlds, retaining what it possesses of identity and self-consciousness, always neither more nor less. Mahatma Ji replies to him, ego circling through the world means ego moving through physical, astral, mental, and causal worlds. and then back again in the physical world. This is basically the cycle of birth, death, and reincarnation, right? From physical plane, the entity moves to astral, mental, then to the causal plane, and then back reborn into the physical world. So Mahatmaji replies that after leaving physical world, only a dim recollection of personality and physical life is there. Eventually, what happens? Atma Buddhi separates from Kam Manas and goes into gestation. So this separation of the principles, it creates an impassable gulf between the immortal ego and the shell or the calm root that is left behind. And what this means that no communication is possible between the two sets of principles. Now, in the present stage of our evolution, the human mind is so influenced by calm that Mahatmaji is saying that not even half of the manas is pure enough to be assimilated with buddhi. When buddhi goes into devachan along with the higher dwar, not even half of the manas is pure enough. So you can imagine we are at such a low level of evolution at present, and how much spiritual progress is required to reach those higher stages. So we know that only the finest and the most spiritual attributes of manas, they get absorbed into the immortal ego. And what remains, it is mingled with calm. It is like the decaying flower. Even the portion of manas, it is impure, it is intermingled with calm. So it is like Mahatmaji compares it to the decaying flower which has been crushed to extract its fragrance. Okay. That is the question 21. Now, there are several subparts in 21. So 21A, Sinnet continues that the spiritual ego is continually evolving personalities because it reincarnates. In which, so that when it reincarnates, it evolves new personalities in which at all events the sense of identity, while it remains united with them, is very complete. The spiritual ego has incarnated in a personality and it is identified with that. So that identity is complete. Mahatmaji says that while the spiritual ego is incarnated in the personality, spiritual ego is what? It is the Atma Buddhi and higher manas. So Atma Buddhi and higher manas, when they are incarnated in the personality, there is a sense of complete identity. This sense of identity, which was the physical man, it becomes very dim after physical death. Okay, and in the shell, this identity is about the material-psychological attributes only that we have seen in the earlier answer. Material-psychological attributes, that means pertaining to embodied existence only. It doesn't know anything about the spiritual self, about Atma Buddhi. No experience. Now, next question continues. Sinnet says, these personalities I understand to be absolutely new evolutions. In each case, AP Sinnet is for what it is worth, absolutely a new invention. Now it will leave a shell behind which will survive for a time. So Sinet's question is that in every incarnation, a new personality has been created, okay, which is a absolutely new invention. So Mahatmaji says that it is erroneous to think that every new personality is an absolutely new invention. That is not true. The new personality is in fact the karmic creation of the preceding personal self. Okay, so sorry. We know basically that the karma we are creating, we are doing in this life, that is what is fashioning our future personality. So in a way, the future personality is the karmic creation of the preceding personal self. And then in the next few lines, Mahatmaji, he has hinted at what might have been the past lives of Sinnet, just to explain to him that how his current personality might have been fashioned. And those past lives, they account for Sinnet's suddenly developed love for mysticism in this life. Okay, this higher self of Sinnet, which is longing to progress spiritually, which is interested in this mysticism, which aspires for all things that are spiritual and which will eventually go into Devachan. That higher self of Sinnet, Mahatmaji calls his friend and brother. While the lower material shell of Sinnet will, in all likelihood, after physical death, it will be communicating to some old friend through a medium. So just to explain the point, Mahatmaji has given this example about Sinnet and his past lives. Now, in the next subpart of the same question, 21C, Sinnet asks that assuming that the spiritual monad temporarily engaged in this incarnation will find enough decent material in the fifth to lay hold of. Okay, what is the question? That the spiritual monad, which is currently in physical incarnation, and then after physical death, it should find enough material from the fifth, that is from the manas, to assimilate, to lay hold of, meaning the purified portion of the manas, so that it can assimilate. So Mahatmaji says, a few years of theosophy will furnish it. Look at the beauty of the statement which Mahatmaji has mentioned. A few years of theosophy will furnish it. In very clear-cut terms, Mahatmaji has mentioned that studying and assimilating the theosophical teachings in our daily life, even for a few years, it is sure to unfold the higher manas, to purify the manas, which will then be assimilated by the spiritual monad, the Atma Buddhi. And when it gets assimilated by the spiritual monad, it becomes the permanent component of our incarnating individuality. That Atma Buddhi Manas is the real man, the real individuality. And all these higher faculties, they are assimilated. So they become permanent. Okay, just by a few years of theosophy. Now, this actually is the spiritual evolution of humanity with which the Mahatmas are concerned. There are three streams: physical, intellectual, and spiritual evolution. And the spiritual evolution is with what the Mahatmas are concerned. Now, next part of question 21D. Sinnet continues to ask that shell, we is talking about the shell will have no consciousness directly after death because it requires a certain time to establish its new center of gravity and evolve its perception proper. So whatever is the perceptive faculty of shell, immediately it will not have after death. It will take some time. That Mahatmaji says is perfectly correct. That is how it works. Then next part of the question, but how much consciousness the shell will have when it has done this? Okay, when the whatever hazy sense of perception comes to the shell, then how much consciousness that shell will have? This is the question. So Mahatmaji says that only as much as there was of the personality in him. Okay, only as much as there is the personality in him, only that much consciousness will come in the shell, which means that consciousness of the shell is proportionate to the strength of the material-psychological desires. This we know very well. Theosophy teaches us that whatever are your desires, if they are so strong that they persist even after physical death, then that is what becomes the force of the shell. It's a hazy memory. So therefore, it is best to control and overcome all such earthly desires during the lifetime itself. And it is best to aspire only for the higher and spiritual things. We must analyze our life now. We must see what are these material desires that we are running after and how we can overcome them. Okay, the tendencies which have been inculcated in us through numberless past lifetimes, they are difficult and cannot be overcome in one go. But we must analyze and at least make a beginning, make an effort, and aspire only for the higher and spiritual things alone. The next question, it's part of question 21F. Sinnet asks, will the shell still be episinnet of which the spiritual ego will think even at the last? as of a person it had known? Or will it be conscious that the individuality is gone? Will it be able to reason about itself at all and to remember anything of its once higher interests? Will it remember the name it bore? So Sinnet is dwelling more on the personality part. He's asking, will the spiritual ego, that is the higher self, Atma Buddhi, will it be able to remember that what person it was, or will it know that that person who was there, it is gone, that individuality is gone, and will it be able to remember the name? A name again belongs to personality. So see, Sinnet is totally dwelling on this lower part, lower constituents. Okay, but Mahatma Ji says that the spiritual ego, it identifies itself alone. It does not think of the shell or of the personality that was. This is one of the most important things to understand about the after death states. Okay, there is no identification with shell or with the personality. Who is the real man? The real man is the spiritual ego, the Atma Buddhi Manas. So it identifies with itself alone. The oracle of Delphi, know thyself, is the direct command that is given by the oracle to the spiritual monad, to Atma Buddhi in Devachan. Know thyself. The spiritual monad is the real person, the real man. Okay. Even the Tathagat or Gautam Buddha, he explained that the idea of permanency of the personality, it is erroneous. This personality is made up of skandh, embodied existence, and its permanency can never be achieved. It is erroneous. Okay, so Sinnet's bent of mind, which is towards personality, it is not only for Sinnet, it is for general people. Even we, unknowingly, unconsciously, we closely associate ourselves with the personality. That is what we have to observe and separate from it, identify our real self. That will be the beginning of our spiritual progress. So the shell's awareness of its identity is a borrowed perception from the medium and the circle of audience. And if the thought of the medium, that person who's acting as medium, if his thoughts or the thought of the audience, they waver, or if there is any disturbance, then the shell also will lose its identity. Okay, identity only belongs to the spiritual ego, which identifies itself alone. Okay, then we go to the next part of question 21G. So Sinnet still has doubts. He's asking that is the shell only inflated with recollections of this sort in mediumistic presence, remaining asleep at all other times? That means shell can have any recollection or memory only when it is in the presence of a medium, and at other times is it asleep? So Mahatma Ji says, yes, this is true, just as explained above. The shell has recollections only in the presence of medium, and finally it remains asleep. Okay, this is for normal cases of in the normal case of birth and death. Now, next part of question 21H. Is the shell conscious of losing anything that feels like life as it gradually disintegrates? So this we know that after a while, the shell will persist till the time it is galvanized by the force of the lower manas, until the time the force of its desires are there, not the desires which are still persisting after death. Till that time, the shell remains in existence. But as that force wears off, then slowly the shell starts disintegrating. So Sinnet is asking, does the shell become conscious of gradually disintegrating, something that feels like life for shell, and now it is losing that life? So Mahatma Ji says, no, the shell is not conscious of its disintegration or loss of cohesion. It is a material existence, so which is cohesive, which keeps the shell together. So when it is not cohesive, it is disintegrating, and the shell is not conscious of it. It is only dimly conscious of the physical death, its own physical death, and that too after a prolonged period of time. That's all. But Mahatma Ji adds that there are few exceptions to this rule. So see, generally shell is not aware of its own disintegration, but the few exceptions are the cases of half successful sorcerers and of very wicked persons who are passionately attached to shells. Okay? Their shells are very material and they want to cling to life. They want to live at all costs. So such shells, they are often instinctively aware when they start disintegrating. And the second case is of some suicides, not all suicides, only in some cases. So these such cases, in that case, the shell becomes aware of its disintegration. It wants to continue to live. So such a shell will cling so tenaciously to anything that resembles life rather than to submit to annihilation. And therefore, such shells, they will seek refuge in a new organism, perhaps in a beast, a dog or a hyena, or it can even seek a human organism. Now, this is what Mahatma Ji is saying. It is called lycanthropy. That means a man turning into an animal when it is, we say it is possessed by a shell. Now, this is a terrible but a real danger to the living people. Okay? So we just need to keep that in mind. The next question, that is question 22. So question 21 is completed. Now we come to Sinnet's next question. He asks Mahatma Ji, what is the nature of life that goes on in the planet of death? Okay. Now he asks a lot of things about this, but Mahatma Ji says he has no permission to answer this question. So then next, Sinnet comes back to questions on physical science. I think we have just about time to take one or two questions. So we'll go to question 23. These are again based on physical science. The question asked is, what other planets of those known to ordinary science besides Mercury belong to our system of worlds? And this is a controversial question even today. Are the more spiritual planets, that is A, B, and Y, Z? This is pertaining to the septenary globes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or Z. Okay, so the more spiritual of the septenary globes are A and B on the descending arc, and Y and Z on the ascending arc. So are the more spiritual planets visible bodies in the sky, or are all those known to astronomy of the more material sort? So even when we speak of septenary Earth, think about it, are those globes of Earth visible? So Mahatma Ji is answering, he answers the first part of the question, that besides Mercury, which other planets belong to our system of world? Mahatma Ji says, Mars and 4 other planets belong to our system. Astronomy knows nothing of them yet, so it is possible that they are on the subtle planes. Okay, these planets, from the septenary globes, the globe A, B, Y, and Z, they perhaps pertain to this first, second, sixth, and seventh globes of our Earth chain, and they are not visible. Okay, and they are not known to science, and they cannot be seen through by physical means, however perfect our physical means may be, but they cannot be seen through that because they are not on the physical plane. They are on the higher and subtle planes. Now, in fact, in The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky has mentioned that Mars and Mercury, they are not part of the Earth chain. She says that the notion that they are part of Earth chain is a great mistake. And it is due to the vagueness and incompleteness of the master's answer. She's pertaining to this answer. And the question of Sinnet himself. That is the reason that the question itself was very vague and master's answer was also very vague and indefinite, which has given rise to this erroneous notion that Mars and Mercury are part of Earth chain. Although it is true that later on Annie Besant has said that Mars and Mercury are part of Earth chain. So it is left to the learner, it is left to each member to exercise their own intuition. Exert yourself mentally, contemplate and try to understand that which planets are part of this chain and which are not. In fact, I would like to share with you one more perception which I have read in some of this theosophical literature, that just as there are 7 sacred planets which guide and look after the evolution on Earth, on the septenary Earth, so also Earth is also part of a group of 7 planets which will guide and look after the evolution of another planetary chain. So these group of planets, Mars, Mercury, they may be part of that septenary group. We do not know. It is just a contemplation, a speculation. But each learner is left to exercise his own intuition in this regard. So with this, I think we can complete today's session. And we have completed till question number 23. And we will begin from question 24 in our next session. So thank you so much. And I will request now Meenakshi ji to give us the translation in Hindi.
नमस्ते सिस्टर, सभी को प्रणाम। आज हम 93AB का अगला भाग ले रहे हैं, जिसकी मैं ट्रांसलेशन करने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ। सीनेट का प्रश्न है, आप कहते हैं और उन भले लोगों के शेल्स भी जिनके पन्ने जीवन की महान पुस्तक में लुप्त नहीं पाए जाएंगे, वे भी अपनी स्मृति और आत्म चेतना की प्रतीति तभी प्राप्त करेंगे जब छठे और सातवें तत्व पांचवें के सार तत्व के साथ अपने जेस्टेशन काल में चले जाएंगे। इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, यह वास्तव में ऐसा नहीं है। जब तक हायर और मिडल डुएड यानी आत्मबुद्धि और काम मनस के बीच संघर्ष शुरू नहीं होता है, समाप्त नहीं होता है और समाप्त नहीं होता है, तब तक कोई भी शेल अपनी स्थिति का एहसास नहीं कर सकता है। जब छठा और सातवां तत्व अपने साथ उसके सूक्ष्म आध्यात्मिक तत्व अंशों को ले जाता है, जो कभी पांचवें तत्व की व्यक्तिगत चेतना थी, तभी शेल धीरे धीरे देहात्मा की छाया में जो कुछ भी बचता है उससे अपनी एक तरह से धुंधली सी चेतना बनाता है। अगला प्रश्न है, उसके बाद आप कहते हैं कि चाहे वह जीव अच्छा हो, बुरा हो या उदासीन हो, उसकी चेतना उसे अचानक छोड़ देती है, जैसे लौ बाती को छोड़ देती है। उसकी बोध क्षमताएं हमेशा के लिए विलुप्त हो जाती है। क्या एक बार मृत हो जाने पर एक भौतिक मस्तिष्क अपनी बोध क्षमताओं को बनाए रख सकता है? जो शेल में महसूस करेगा वह कुछ ऐसा है जो उधार की परावर्तित प्रकाश के साथ महसूस करता है। फिर एक शेल की स्मृति और स्वचेतना का स्वरूप क्या है? इस पर मास्टर आंसर देते हैं, वह सब जो पांचवें निचले स्कंधों के भौतिक इच्छा, भावना और संवेदनाओं से संबंधित है, वह सब जो छठे के विशुद्ध आध्यात्मिक बोध, भावनाओं और अनुभूतियों के अपात्र और पर्याप्त रूप से संबंधित नहीं होने के कारण देवाचन में नवजात जीवात्मा द्वारा एक कचरे के रूप में निष्कासित किया जाएगा। पांचवें तत्व के एक हिस्से द्वारा मजबूत किया गया मोनाड में अहम भाव की दिव्य आध्यात्मिक धारणा को बनाए रखने के लिए देवाचन में आवश्यक है, जो अन्यथा वस्तु और विषय के संबंध में कोई चेतना नहीं होगी। यह सब हमेशा के लिए विलुप्त हो जाता है, अर्थात शारीरिक मृत्यु के क्षण में देवाचन की दहलीज पर नए जीवात्मा की दृष्टि के सामने इकट्ठा होने और उनके द्वारा अस्वीकृत करने पुनः लौटता है। यह 7 राउंड्स पूरे होने के बाद यह माइनर साइकिल के अंत में तीसरी बार पूर्ण तरह से वापस आएगा, जब मनुष्य जब समुच्च अस्तित्वों का कुल योग तौला जाएगा। तराजू के एक और गुण, दूसरी ओर दोष होंगे, लेकिन उस व्यक्ति में, उस जीवात्मा में, उस अच्छे बुरे या उदासीन व्यक्तित्व में से चेतना अचानक से ऐसे चली जाती है जैसे लौ बाती को छोड़ देती। आप पूछते हैं कि शेल की स्मृति और स्वचेतना का स्वरूप क्या है। जैसे कि मैंने अपने नोट में कहा, यह परावर्तित या उधार ली गई रोशनी से बेहतर नहीं है, ऐसा मास्टर उनको आंसर देते हैं। एक पागल व्यक्ति अपने गत जीवन के कुछ हिस्सों को बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से याद कर सकता है, फिर भी वह किसी भी चीज को उसके असल स्वरूप में देखने में असमर्थ है, क्योंकि उसके उच्च तत्व मनस और बुद्धि का हिस्सा उसमें अकार्यक्षम होता है, उसे छोड़ चुके होते हैं। इसी प्रकार एक शेल के साथ होता है। मीडियम के सानिध्य में आने के बाद वह मीडियम के उधार लिए हुए अंगों और उसके मैग्नेटिक सिंपैथी वाले लोगों के जरिए वह स्पष्ट रूप से जानेगा, लेकिन बाकी लोगों और मीडियम की बोधगम्य क्षमताओं और यादों में शेल जो पा सकता है उससे अधिक नहीं। इसलिए अक्सर तर्कसंगत और कभी-कभी अत्यधिक अक्लमंदपूर्ण उत्तर होते हैं। इसलिए वहां मौजूद लोगों और मीडियम को ज्ञात बातों के अलावा कुछ भी ज्ञात नहीं होता है। शेल को एक अत्यंत बुद्धिमान विद्वान लेकिन अध्यात्म में बिल्कुल ही रुचि न रखने वाले व्यक्ति जिसकी नेचुरल डेथ हुई हो, उसका शेल लंबे समय तक बना रहेगा और उसकी स्मृति की छाया जो पांचवें तत्व में छोड़ा गया छठे तत्व का अवशेष है, वह ट्रांस में गए मीडियम के माध्यम से प्रवचन दे सकता है और तोते की तरह वही दोहरा सकता है जो उसने अपने जीवन काल में जाना था और जिस पर उसने बहुत चिंतन किया था। व्यक्तिगत चेतना मृत्यु के समय सभी को छोड़ देती है और जब एक शेल में स्मृति का केंद्र पुनः स्थापित होता है, तब वह अपनी यादों को याद रखेगा और बोलेगा, लेकिन किसी जीवित मनुष्य के मस्तिष्क में के माध्यम से। अगला प्रश्न है, स्पिरिचुअल ईगो यानी बुद्धि तत्व अपनी पहचान और स्व चेतना को बनाए रखते हुए वर्ल्ड्स के चक्कर लगाता है। इस पर मास्टर आंसर देते हैं, उसके पर्सनालिटी और उसके बिल्कुल ही भौतिक जीवन की लगभग पूरी फिर भी धुंधली याद रहती है। जैसा कि पूर्ण पागलपन के मामलों में सातवां और छठा तत्व जेस्टेशन में जाने के क्षण में दो उच्चतर द्वयी डुएट्स का अंतिम और आखिरी विच्छेद दोनों के बीच एक अभेद्य खाई खोद देता है। यह पांचवें तत्व का कुछ हिस्सा भी नहीं जो देवाचन में जाता है। सिनेट का प्रश्न है कि लेकिन यह निरंतर विकसित होने वाली पर्सनालिटीज है जिसमें हर स्थिति में पहचान की भावना उनके साथ एकजुट रहने पर बहुत पूर्ण होती है। इस पर मास्टर का आंसर है कि स्पिरिचुअल ईगो यानी आत्मबुद्धि मनस पर्सनालिटीज का विकास करता रहता है जिसमें जीवित रहते हुए पहचान की भावना पूर्णतः रहती है। फिजिकल ईगो से विलग होने के उपरांत वह भावना बहुत मंद हो जाती है और पूरी तरह से भौतिक मनुष्य की यादों से संबंधित होती है। सिनेट का क्वेश्चन है, अब मैं समझता हूँ कि ये व्यक्तित्व यानी पर्सनालिटीज प्रत्येक में बिल्कुल नए उद्भव है। जो भी हो, एपी सिनेट बिल्कुल ही एक नया आविष्कार है। अब यह अपने पीछे एक शेल छोड़ जाएगा जो कुछ समय तक बना रहेगा। इस पर मास्टर आंसर देते हैं कि एपी सिनेट बिल्कुल नया आविष्कार नहीं है, वह अपने पूर्ववर्ती व्यक्तित्व की उपज और निर्माण है। जो पूर्व जन्म के उदाहरण मास्टर देते हैं और कहते हैं कि जो एपिसिनेट के मिस्टिसिज्म के प्रति अचानक जागृत प्रेम का कारण होगा। केएच के मित्र और भाई एपिसिनेट देवाचन जाएंगे। सिनेट का अगला क्वेश्चन है, जो कुछ समय तक यह मानते हुए कि इस जन्म में कुछ वक्त के लिए संलग्न स्पिरिचुअल मोनाड को पांचवें तत्व में पर्याप्त उचित मटेरियल मिल जाएगा। इस पर मास्टर कहते हैं कि उसे पर्याप्त उचित सामग्री और अतिरिक्त सामग्री मिल जाएगी। थियोसॉफी के कुछ वर्षों में यह प्रदान होगा, उसके अध्ययन से प्रदान होगा। सीनेट का प्रश्न है, उस शेल को मृत्यु के तुरंत बाद कोई चेतना नहीं रहेगी क्योंकि उसे अपना नया सेंटर ऑफ ग्रेविटी स्थापित करने और अपना ग्रहण बोध विकसित करने के लिए कुछ समय की जरूरत होती है। इस पर मास्टर कहते हैं कि बिल्कुल सही रूप से परिभाषित है। सीनेट का क्वेश्चन है, लेकिन ऐसा करने के बाद उसमें कितनी चेतना होगी? इस पर मास्टर कहते हैं कि दर्पण में एपी सीनेट के प्रतिबिंब में असली जीवित एपी सीनेट का जितना व्यक्तित्व है उतनी चेतना होगी। सीनेट का प्रश्न है, क्या यह अभी भी एपी सीनेट होगा जिसके बारे में स्पिरिचुअल ईगो अंतिम समय में भी एक ऐसे व्यक्ति के रूप में सोचेगा जिसे वह जानता था? या क्या यह इस बात से अवगत होगा कि इंडिविजुअलिटी चली गई है? क्या यह अपने बारे में तर्क करने में सक्षम होगा और अपने पहले वाले उच्च प्रकार की रुचियों के बारे में कुछ भी याद कर पाएगा? क्या यह अपने नाम को याद रखेगा? इस पर मास्टर कहते हैं कि स्पिरिचुअल ईगो एपिसिनेट के शेल के बारे में उतना ही सोचेगा जितना कि वह अपने द्वारा पहने आखिरी कपड़ों के बारे में सोचता है। न ही वह इस बात से अवगत होगा कि इंडिविजुअलिटी चली गई है, क्योंकि वह केवल उस इंडिविजुअलिटी और स्पिरिचुअल पर्सनालिटी का ही स्वयं में अवलोकन करेगा। स्वयं को जाने, ऐसा देवाचन में स्पिरिचुअल मोनार्ड के लिए ओरेकल का स्पष्ट आदेश है। और शेर को ध्यान में रखते हुए गुह्य स्कंधों के सिद्धांतों को तथागत ने प्रतिपादित किया। अगला क्वेश्चन है, या यह केवल माध्यमों की उपस्थिति में इस तरह की यादों से भरा होता है और अन्य समय में निद्रिस्त होता है? इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं कि और अंततः वह सो जाता है। अगला क्वेश्चन है, और क्या यह ऐसी किसी चीज के चले जाने के बारे में सचेत रहता है जो जीवन की तरह महसूस होती है, क्योंकि यह धीरे धीरे विघटित हो जाती है? इस पर मास्टर आंसर देते हैं कि नहीं, वह इस संयोग के ह्रास के बारे में सचेत नहीं है। इसके अलावा एक शेल में ऐसी भावना प्राकृतिक उद्देश्यों के लिए बिल्कुल व्यर्थ है। यह शायद ही कुछ ऐसा महसूस कर सकता है जो किसी मीडियम या उसके सहयोगियों द्वारा कभी सपने में भी नहीं सोचा गया। लेकिन कुछ लंबे अरसे के बाद यह अपने शारीरिक मृत्यु के बारे में थोड़ा सचेत है, बस इतना ही। इस नियम के कुछ अपवाद है। अर्ध सफल तांत्रिक, बहुत दुष्ट व्यक्ति जो स्वयं से बहुत अधिक जुड़े हैं, यह सब जीवित लोगों के लिए दरअसल खतरे भरे होते हैं। यह बहुत ही भौतिकवादी शेल जिनका अंतिम विचार मैं और जीवित रहना होता है, वे इसे अक्सर असहजता से महसूस करेंगे। हालांकि सभी नहीं, पर कुछ आत्महत्या करने वाले भी ऐसा ही करते हैं। फिर जो होता है वह भयानक होता है, क्योंकि यह मृत्यु के बाद पशु भेड़िए में रूपांतरित होने का मामला हो जाता है। शेल अपने जीवन स्वरूप से इतने जुनून से चिपका रहेगा कि वह किसी भी जानवर में, कुत्ते में, एक लकड़बग्घे में, एक पक्षी में शरण लेगा जब कोई मानव जीव आसपास न हो, वह स्वयं के विनाशित होने के बजाय। इसके बाद क्वेश्चन है, प्लेनेट ऑफ डेथ पर का जीवन कैसा है? यह सीनेट का क्वेश्चन है। मास्टर आंसर देते हैं कि ऐसे प्रश्न का उत्तर देने का मुझे कोई अधिकार नहीं। अगले क्वेश्चन पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं कि मार्स और 4 अन्य ग्रह के बारे में खगोल विज्ञान कुछ नहीं जानता। न तो ए बी नहीं, न तो वाई जेड उन्हें ज्ञात है, न ही किसी माध्यम से उन्हें देखा जा सकता है। थैंक यू, नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. And now we have the session open for question and answers. If anybody would like to, if anyone has any doubts or would like to add something to what we have discussed today, you're most welcome.
मैडम नमस्कार।
Namaskar.
ये जो आपने जो बताया, हमारे जो 7 ग्लोब होते हैं, ए बी और एफ जी, एक लोअर है एक हायर है, तो इसमें लाइफ कैसे वर्क करती है?
सब प्लैनेट सेप्टेनरी है, अर्थ भी सेप्टेनरी है. आई विल आंसर इट इन इंग्लिश. The earth is also septenary. Okay, so you think of it like man. Man has 7 bodies. Okay, so similarly, every planet also has 7 bodies. The life wave passes from one globe to the next. Okay, and these 7 globes, they are on different planes. All are not on the physical plane. Only our physical Earth is on the physical plane. Okay, so the globes are numbered as A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so the globe A, it is on the higher mental plane or on the buddhic plane. In some diagrams in secret document, HPB has shown it on the buddhic plane. Then the globe B, it is on the next lower plane, the mental plane. Then the globe C, it is on the astral plane. It is part of Earth only, but it is on the astral plane. You have to remember that these planes are not in layers. The planes are interpenetrating. So these globes also, they are all together. They are concentric. Rather, concentric is not the correct word, but they are interpenetrating globes. Okay, together. So that globe C is on astral, then comes the globe D, which is our physical Earth. And life is evolving here presently now on the globe D, the fourth globe. After that comes the ascending arc. So after globe D, you will have the next globe E, which is again on astral. Then the next one after E, that will be on the mental. And then the seventh globe, which will be on the higher, that is higher mental or buddhi. So life wave, it travels from one globe to the next. And the previous globe which the life wave will leave, that globe will go into obscuration. Does this make sense?
तो इसमें मतलब वहां कैसे लाइफ वर्क करती है वो अपने को नहीं मालूम हो सकता इन चारों ग्लोब में?
उस ग्लोब उसके बारे में कोई डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया नहीं है, बट यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट इट इज द सेम सेट ऑफ मोनेड्स हु आर इवॉल्विंग फ्रॉम थ्रू दीज डिफरेंट ग्लोब्स.
ओके
According to
मैडम,
our karmas,
थैंक यू.
we go from one group to another, madam.
Sorry, can you repeat your question, please?
I said, according to our karmas, we go from one globe to another,
It is
one
not.
plane to another.
It is not according to the karma. It is, see, basically, it is the plan. The evolution has to happen like that. That the life wave will move from one globe to the next after all 7 root races or 7 classes have evolved on one globe. On every globe, okay, let's look at it from the beginning. On each globe, there are 7 kingdoms which are evolving, right? The 3 elemental kingdoms, the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the human kingdom. Okay, now each of these kingdoms, they have 7 groups. In case of human kingdom, they are called the 7 root races. So one by one, these races are evolving. There is a lot of overlap between the races. So we cannot demarcate where the race completes. But once all the 7 root races have evolved and it comes, the evolution of the 7th root race is completed, then the life wave will move on from our current planet D, that is physical Earth, on to the next planet E. That is not a separate planet. It is the astral globe of Earth itself. Okay. In between these two, in between this movement from one globe to the next, there is a period of obscuration, a rest period. All these monads, they are also in a dormant period. And then life starts again on the next globe.
Yes.
Can I share my understanding of this?
Yes, Vimalji, please.
So, no, actually, I sort of disagree with what you said just now, because what I understand is that we are in a chain which is called which is in this chain that we are in. Earth is is globe D, globe C and globe E are Mars and Mercury. and globe A, B, and we call it E, F, G, or in this case they call it Z. But those two, the B is in the astral and A is in the lower mental. This is our chain. So what happens is that now after arts, now the question was, what sort of life is there in, for example, in globe C? Let's take globe C. What is the life in Mars? The life in Mars, since it is in the physical plane, will be physical also. So when we are, and now when we finish our, before we came into Earth, we had to finish 7 rounds in Mars, the 7 root races in Mars. Then we come to Earth, do our 7 root races in Earth. Then we go to Mercury, again a physical plane. We do our 7 root races on Mercury. Then we go to the astral plane, and there in our astral body we do our 7 root races. And in the lower mental, again we do our 7 root races. In every single globe, and these are not co-substantial. The co-substantial part of that 7 planes that is there in, that is a co-substantial, what they call, that all these astral, lower mental are all part of one another, is true for every single globe. It is not true for these separate globes. These 7 are not co-substantial. They are separate. This is my understanding. I may be wrong. I mean, others might correct me. I don't know. But this is my understanding, that they are not co-substantial.
So very nice, Vimalji. Whatever you have understood, you have explained with absolute clarity. That is one thing which is very good. Our understanding should be clear. Now, first I will come to this question. We have just dealt with it in the letter, that whether Mars and Mercury are part of the Earth chain, to which Madam Blavatsky has categorically said no, whereas Dr. Annie Besant has said yes. So it is left to the learner what they want to think about, or rather what intuition they have as they learn. So I leave it at that. I will not say whether Mercury or Mars are their part of on the physical plane and humanity evolved on that. Okay. Now, as far as I have referred from the secret doctrine, the globes are shown only the physical, that is globe D, that is shown on the physical plane. Okay, that is the diagram which I am referring to from the secret doctrine. So the other part which you explained, that on each globe, 7 root races have to be completed, that is correct. So even on the previous globe, the 7 groups or root races, they have evolved. Now coming on this globe D, again 7 root races have to evolve. We are currently in the 5th root race. Once the 7th one is complete, life moves on to the next globe, in which again the 7 will happen. The question whether the next one is on physical or on astral, that is controversial, which we leave to individual learners. Okay. Now, the
Madam, I would like to say something.
Yes.
Madam told that the life on the earth has come from Mars, whereas in the Man, Whence and Whither, Mr. Leadbeater has said that the life on the earth has come from Moon, from globe Moon, which has now reduced to a smaller size, but at that time it was bigger, and Earth was its planet.
Right.
That was the evolution of the man, which is on the Earth at present. It has come from the Moon chain, Moon, not the Earth. That's
yes, sir. That is absolutely right. It has come from the Moon chain, but you must understand that the Moon chain also had this A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So when the D component, which was in the Moon chain, gets reflected in the D component of the Earth chain. But it doesn't mean that that this is a separate chain altogether. This Mars, Mercury and all is a separate Earth chain, whereas the Moon chain was a separate chain. Try and see that the C component of the Moon chain will be reflected in the Mars, in the Earth chain. That is the transference. If you remember that picture, the diagram in the secret doctrine, where the chain ka jo ek chain ke it goes to the other, that part, yes, that part is that is, you're right, but you have to understand it like this.
So Vimalji, you've got the picture right, but this point we are leaving it to individual learners whether Mercury and Mars are part of the Earth chain. Okay. So that is left to individual viewers. And whereas Gautamji is right in saying that the moon chain was the previous chain, which has gone into obscuration now, and the life principles of the moon chain have been transferred to the earth chain. So as far as that goes, it is right. I will now request Pradeepji or Shindeji to add their views on this.
No, that what secret in a secret doctrine, what Madam told to us, I am not disputing it, but subsequently, lead beaters have given some kind of a different version.
Yes.
That so and so is in the earth chain, not in the separate chain. Anyway, that is a different thing. But what the question, original question, how life travels, the one point which also you mentioned, that life as a whole, whether elemental one to human kingdom, all will travel en mass to the next where we have completed in the previous incarnation. It is completed all the say about we are going through the fourth round, and in that that globe we have completed third round. This monad, this life, whatever we can name it, they have completed third round. So the life force in now at present stage, consisting of all elemental one to human kingdom, all will go together.
Yes.
Madhavji, you should listen it that all will go together like a river, flood water coming from one particular place, where the water, whatever in condition, they will go. They will go reach their in particular. So in that circumstances, this Earth, our planet Earth, there will be no life force. Means fourth round we have completed. Sorry, fourth round. Fourth round will be completed. So we will travel to this in the Earth chain. We will travel to the next globe, where the life force will complete their next means they will complete their again full round. Then they will complete this like this process will go on like this. So the question is that how the life is moving, means we can imagine it, how life this period is over. We have completed this fourth round. Now the term is over. There will be mini pralaya, means arts and will be full pralaya. Then we will go to the next round. This is the this way life will. Again, it will come, means completing all this right hand side globes. Then we will start again fifth round. Again fifth round people will be available in our globe, in the present globe. And there are people like Buddha is a sixth rounder. Masters, Confucius, Laos, they are fifth rounder. So when the life will come again reached here, there are more advanced people will be available here. So like this, Madhavji, life will goes on, continue in their journey, in their unfoldment. Sindhe sir is going to say something.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. A very nice discussion. VIBHA has given the thought-provoking details. And it is really interesting to study, because when we study such things, we are not in the physical plane, we are not in the astral plane, we are not in the mental plane, we are in the abstract plane. That abstract plane is the Buddhic plane. And we all are traveling, and we are interconnected, as VIBHA has said. All these globes, what we say, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all these are interpenetrating. In the sense, like our bodies which are interpenetrating, they are not separate. And what we say, Father, Mother, and Son, that divine Trinity, absolute monad. That absolute monad is connected to the universal consciousness, that is the Atma Buddhi Manasa. That is our individuality. We are connected with that. With that Sutratma, we are connected. We are reflected by that absolute trinity to universal consciousness. And this universal consciousness is again reflected in our lower personality. That is what Vibhaji has explained very nicely. This is all connected, especially the human being. In human being, this Sutratma connects all these 7 planes, 7 constituents. And therefore, it is the human consciousness only can imagine what are these planets, what is the divine plan, how it works. And there are many doubts, and even Sinnet has asked so many doubts. Now we are thinking how simple questions he was asking, because that time it was not so clear, but now it is made very clear. And Vibhaji has explained very nicely. All these globes are there in the earth itself. A, B, C, D, whatever we say, Vibhaji has said, they are all interpenetrated. They are there. And as you said, we have come from the moon. Moon is also the, rather earth is the part of the moon, actually. When complete evolution, 7 planes or 7 rounds finished, then we have come, not 7 rounds, what is that? 7, I think 7 root races, yeah. 7 root races when we complete, then we are carried to the other. This is all what Mahatma has given us the knowledge. We have to think over it deeply. And it is that we are definitely connected with this. So what we have to understand from such study is that faculty of buddhi, which functions in human beings in various ways, but it fundamentally vibrationary unity. So therefore, HPB advised, keep always all at the background of your mind this ideal of unity. You are not apart, you are one with it. And Brother Aikitaimini wrote about the buddhi. The buddhi functions is fourfold. It functions as understanding. We first try to understand. Then we must try to intellectualize. So we are trying to understand these plans. And then we are having our own concept, idea, intellectual understanding we go. Then there should be third one, viveka, which is right and which is wrong. And the last one is the intuition. So that is what Aikitaimini says. Buddhi, our buddhi is going through understanding, then intelligence, then viveka, and then intuition. So understanding means comprehending. Intelligence means awakening to its inner aspect. And viveka means for spiritual living. And this quality developed. When this quality is developed, there will be refinement of the mind begins. Such a new mind then gives clarity about what is actually is. So these are the effects we have to do. These are the efforts we have to do. I think it is good discussion, and I appreciate Vibhaji's explanation. She explained very nicely, but still we don't understand. It is true. It's true. Whatever questions are asked, human consciousness cannot comprehend. That comprehension is
Mahatma given a very clear-cut answer.
Yeah.
One of the answer to the question. The more we study, more we live theosophy, then we will be able to understand this.
Yeah. So let us develop our buddhic faculty. That is what even Aikitaimini has given us the guidance. So thank you, Vibhaji, and thank you all others who have discussed about it. It is good to be in this buddhic plane when we attend such lectures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before we close, I would just like to add one more thing, that the knowledge which has been given to us, on which we are basing our lectures and then deliberating and trying to understand, we do not know, all the knowledge is not given, only part of it is given. That is why we are coming across so many controversial questions which we cannot understand. For example, that Mars and Mercury and Earth. Because even at the time when ISIS Unveiled was written, man was portrayed only as a triune, body, soul, and spirit.
Yes,
And therefore, there were many controversies because they didn't understand after death states. Only when septenary constitution was given later on at the time of secret doctrine, then these things became clear. So we do not know the things which we are not understanding now. Maybe there is more to it, which will come later on. And Master says you will get what you deserve. So.
And in the Western world, till people are same spirit, body, soul, something they are going on still.
Yes.
Three bodies, my human being is in three parts: body, soul, spirit. Anyway, that is giving us to understand in our capacity, which we will be able to understand properly.
And therefore it is said, more details we give, more problems we face. So better let them, therefore secrecy is said. So many things need to be discussed or what we can say, comprehend individually.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So, if there are no more questions, then we'll bring our session to a close.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you all for joining, and let us close the session with our closing prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, and thank you all for joining. And hopefully in the next session, we will be able to complete this letter.
Thank you.